Chess Diagnostic.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Chess Diagnostic. This is Andrew. Today we're going to look at a game played in 1907 between Akiba Rubenstein and Rotlewi as white, who was a strong master, but of course Rubinstein was one of the original grandmasters and top in the world at one point. So this is a world-famous game that I initially studied when I started out, and the moves just seemed magical at first, and they certainly still are, but when we analyze it deeper, we can see that it's just a very tactical game and a very beautiful combination. It starts off with d4, d5, and we get a queen's pawn game, just simple development, quite symmetrical. They're just developing the knights before the bishops, and now we're in the Tarrasch defense with this center pawn formation. All the D and C pawns move forward, and the central struggle mainly revolves around which pawns are traded and which ones become weak, as well as the placement of the minor pieces. So, of course, white takes from D to C, bishop takes, but now the bishop's active. And with this move, of course, white's intending to have a B push and then possibly push the C pawn. And it's equal at this point. So black decides to enact the same idea or give his bishop a square. But instead of moving his bishop back, the D square is a much better square. And white starts to go wrong at this point with queen to d2. Now, it's not totally losing at the moment, but it's a little awkward because this queen should be placed either on the c file, or he should have just simply developed the bishop here or here and castled. So a little inaccuracy by Rotlewi. So black plays queen d7. Now it looks like white could have just played c5, but actually after bishop to c7 and these moves with the rook coming, black's main idea is to play e5 and then develop this bishop to f5 or forward. And at that point, black would have quite an easy game, really no problems, as well as the possibility to start a minority attack with a5 and just basically attacking this white queenside pawn formation. So we don't get that. Instead, after queen d7, black develops his bishop to d3, and then Rubinstein takes the pawn and then uses that to push the bishop back with a tempo and then develop his rook and bishop very easily. Of course, this queen is in a bad place, as I said earlier, so he has to move it because after this bishop move and then castles, now black is threatening to take this pawn and then, well, after a knight trade at least, he's threatening to take this pawn and then check and win this bishop. So white felt the need to push the bishop back, but the problem is that now he's creating weaknesses along the diagonals, which these bishops exploit. So at this point, black is standing better because he's fully developed with his rooks on open files, and his bishops are much stronger. Of course, this is an error because white thinks that he's going to push this knight back, but he actually has much bigger problems. After the bishop check, the king moves, and now what do you think you should play? Should we move the knight back? Of course not. We're going to increase our activity, and actually we have the brilliant move, knight to g4. Of course, the queen could take, but then after the rook takes, these pieces, for example, the queen takes, we're not only threatening this piece to win an exchange, but we're also threatening rook to d2, threatening this pawn and the bishop. So the queen cannot take this knight, but of course after the bishop moves forward, so after the knight moves forward, he tries to close off a diagonal with bishop to e4, but of course the queen comes in, queen to h4. Now he's actually threatening checkmate, a very simple threat. So after the pawn moves forward to threaten the queen, if you want to think of what you should do, think of all of the checks, captures, and threats. Of course, we have here, but the knight could just take. How can we eliminate a defender and cause more problems for black? Or for white? So white is threatening to take the queen, but we actually have the brilliant move, rook takes knight, eliminating a defender of e4. Now, if he takes the queen, which he does, and that's actually a mistake, we can bring in another rook, and now we're threatening, if the queen takes this rook, check, and then if queen to g2, which actually this happened in the game, the rook comes over, and now if the queen takes, we get checkmate, and the only other move is to try to throw pieces in front of this bishop, cutting off the king from a square. So at the end of the line, we get checkmate. But actually, at this point, white resigned, and there's no way to prevent checkmate. So definitely an incredibly brilliant game and a beautiful combination. If we look at this position, the queen's under attack, but it doesn't even matter. White can take. So this is what looking for simple forcing moves does in the end. Of course, this combination is brilliant and mistakes were made by white, but it's one of the greatest combinations of all time. If you enjoyed this analysis, I encourage you to subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the future.